This week on LTC News, priority issues for Senator Kennedy.
So we've got bills that are dealing with education, with the environment, with housing, with the opiate crisis.
Discretionary grants making a difference.
So one project will work on eliminating generational poverty, which is what the Boys and Girls Clubs vision is for all of our members.
And a WinterFest recap.
2, 1.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. Lowell's annual WinterFest in downtown Lowell, February 22nd and 23rd, was a blast. It had a carousel and ice skating for the kids, bands in a heated tent, and the ever-popular chocolate festival. There was something for everyone. Here are some highlights.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Up in here. I don't really know where I stand. My feet are used to walking on dry land, but oh, it makes me so proud. I said ever since I met you, girl, I've been walking on a cloud.
Everything is happening here. You know, it's a great family outing, and we have music, we have games, we have marshmallows, carousel rides, toasting, your own marshmallow. Just so much. Soup competition, which we just came from, that was awesome. And I haven't made my way over to chocolate. I may be a little late, but I just think it's a wonderful way of getting people out and having a great time with their kids and with their friends and with their family. Couldn't be better. I think, one of the things I hear over and over from people, either who've been here for a long time or who've come from afar, come here for the first time. They had no idea all of these things are happening. We have festivals all year round, but this is the first, for the season, and it will continue on all throughout the summer. Of course, the Lowell Folk Festival is the big festival, but that's not the only one. So there's a whole lot. If you go to our website, and you will see all of the activities that are happening year round. But I think, one of the things that people appreciate is someplace they can bring their kids and have it be an affordable, fun event. And, what could be better than that?
The soup festival was fabulous. It's amazing how many, we had 15 soups, and everyone, I'm glad I wasn't voting because they were fabulous. They were great. We had a great crowd. The crowd comes down from here all the way down to the high school waiting to get in at noontime. And about a half hour, 40 minutes ago, we ran out of the first soup. And now they're almost all of them running out, so it's just open to whoever, and people are loving it. It's a great event. All of them were fabulous.
It looks like the weather cooperated this year. Last year, it poured. City Councilor Ed Kennedy is settling in as state senator for the 1st Middlesex District. He told LTC News that he's enjoying his new position on Beacon Hill, and he feels he has been able to manage both elected positions for now.
The two positions so far has been okay, and I would expect that it probably will continue. It does, you take off one hat, put on another hat, so there's been a little bit of that, but for the most part, I'm handling it pretty well. So, it helps that I've been on the city council for a long time. So that comes pretty easy for me. There's a little bit of a learning curve down at the State House, but not so bad. So far so good. And as I think I've said before, I'm committed to staying on the City Council at least until we do the bond authorization for the high school.
Kennedy and his staff are working on several bills that fulfill the promises of his election campaign.
So we've got bills that are dealing with education, with the environment, with housing, with the opiate crisis, and with food as well, or giving away food, old food. And most of the legislation that we came up with comes right out of the campaign. It's items that we campaigned on last year.
Kennedy also made a campaign promise to try to mitigate the effects of student loan debt,
which is a big problem throughout the Commonwealth and something that has a negative effect on our economy as a whole. Whether or not you have a student loan debt or you don't, it affects everybody because it affects the economy overall. And so we did file a bill that would allow employers, it gives employers an incentive to take $2,000 off a year for employees who have student loan debt. It's a big problem in Massachusetts and throughout the nation, but we've got in Massachusetts a situation where we've got two generations now, so that we've got parents still paying off their student loans, and we've also got their children incurring new debt.
An immediate priority, Kennedy says, is to make changes to the school funding formula under the Commonwealth's Chapter 70 program.
What version passes is yet to be seen, but I do think that there'll be some changes on with the funding formula for Chapter 70, which is extremely important to Lowell, but it's important to every community in the 1st District. And the forecast that we've done shows that there would be an increase in funding for every community in the 1st Middlesex District. Part of the problem before with the funding formula has been, you would take it away from some communities to give to another, but this would be new funding that would come in gradually over a 5-year period, and then at the end of 5 years would be an additional $1 billion, which is a considerable amount of money. But the funding formula has not been changed since 1993. It's long overdue for a change, and we need to adequately fund education in Massachusetts.
State Senator Kennedy was assigned to committees on elder affairs, the environment, community development, and small business. He was happy to be assigned to 2 committees in particular.
Well, I'm chairman of the Tourism, Arts, and Cultural Development Subcommittee, which was Eileen Donahue's first committee when she first went to the Senate, and I think for Lowell that's a good one to be on. I also sit on higher education, and once again, in the district we've got the university and we have Middlesex Community College, so I think that that's a good one.
Kennedy plans to hold regular business hours around his district in public spaces such as libraries and senior centers. The Greater Lowell Community Foundation invests funds for individuals and organizations that want to use their investments for good. And each year, the foundation awards discretionary grants to local nonprofits for specific projects. This year, they gave over $135,000 to 18 nonprofits. Executive Director Jay Linehan explains.
The Greater Lowell Community Foundation exists to help people with their philanthropy. We are an organization that manages some $37 million for some 500 different people who have established like 370 different funds. And we're very pleased to do that. I mean, it gives us the ability to look into the community to see what some of the greatest needs are, and there are many. And then we help with that information to communicate back to our donors as to what some of those critical needs need to be addressed and how to go about that. The board did some analysis, and one of the things we wanted to do was have a focus on social education. In social education, people go, what's social education? I think in a nutshell, it's civic engagement, it's social justice, in particular with young people as to, how should they engage in their community? Should they register to vote? Should they vote? Should they understand what's going on in their community? What's their government doing? what's going on with the environment, what's going on with immigration, what's going on with gun control. A lot of those different things I think are very, very important for young people to understand. We have a wonderful relationship with the Boys and Girls Club. We gave them a grant for social education, and it's for My Community Matters.
We want our teens to grow up and be the leaders in this community. And sometimes when you live in the Lower Highlands or the Acre, it can feel like it's not necessarily the people that look like you or that are from your neighborhood that are running the community. So the fact that they have a voice is really important because we want to make sure that they have that in the future. What this year's grant is going to do, it's already trained about 8 of our teens to become peer facilitators. And then they also took part in Teen Block did a great conference a couple weeks back for teens talking about the issues of facing teens today. So what will happen is those teens will go back and work with a larger group of teens here and decide what 2 issues are really important to them that they want to address this year and take on as projects. And they'll use the facilitation skills they learned to work on those projects. And one project will work on eliminating generational poverty, which is what the Boys and Girls Club's vision is for all of our members. And then the other one they're working on to decide themselves what it is, what's most important to teens today. And they'll take those projects and work on them for a year to try to make a difference. So we're excited to see what they come up with, and we're thrilled that they're going to have a voice, and we appreciate the Community Foundation making that happen.
The environment needs leaders too. The foundation gave a grant to the Mass Audubon Society and the Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust to work with students at Lowell High.
These are Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and they're really, really cool. For the indoor activity today, since it's cold and we have quite a bit of snow on the ground, we brought cockroaches as a follow-up to our study of compost, which we did last week. They're fun. Yeah. Grants like this are hugely important to support the work that we do with these young people.
Getting them out in the wild spaces of Lowell that they didn't know that were in their backyards. We do plantings, create rain gardens to help pollution. We did one in the alleyway of Lowell High School. We also do wildlife tracking, and they also help with some research such as like the fish monitoring program at the Concord River.
By doing environmental adventures, they learned so much about the outdoors and the environment of Lowell and its importance in the health and welfare of all the citizens of Lowell.
A complete list of the many grants awarded this year can be found on the foundation website. Lowell Women's Week has been an annual tradition for 24 years. It honors influential Lowell women, past and present, by presenting a collection of events that educate, entertain, and celebrate women. This year, the theme is The Time Is Now. Upcoming events include a series of financial literacy workshops geared to women put on by CTI. On Saturday, March 9th, you could attend a hands-on history weaving workshop at Lowell National Historical Park, or the Women's Day Marketplace at Mill No. 5, featuring all female vendors. The popular Women's Week breakfast on March 11th at Lindsay's in Dracut will have a speaker program and the Because of Her Awards. Middlesex Community College will host a high tea on March 14th. On Friday, March 15th, at Humanity Style on Merrimack Street, local women of color share their stories. And on March 19th, there will be a film screening of 2 documentaries produced by Deb Fowler on issues faced by the LGBTQ community at LTC.
Thank the universe for my wonderful life.
And there is more. Get all the information on the Lowell Women's Week website. In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Lowell City Solicitor Christine O'Connor.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Chris Scott, the Enterprise editor at The Sun, here in the LTC studio with another edition of Sunspot. And with me, to commemorate Lowell Women's Week, we thought it would be appropriate to have on one of the most influential women in the city, the top city lawyer, Christine O'Connor. Christine, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, we've known each other for a long, long time now.
Yes, we have.
And there are many different things we could talk about, but I thought it would be appropriate that we start with the voting rights lawsuit.
Okay.
And, I know there's limitations to what you can say, but maybe we can just talk about that in general terms.
Sure.
And when it might wrap up. I know that there's been several mediation sessions right in front of, I don't know if it's in front of a federal judge but in front of some federal official. So maybe you could just enlighten our viewers on where that stands and where you see that going.
Sure. To the best of my ability, as you noted, it's currently in mediation, and as a result, all parties are subject to strict confidentiality with respect to the mediation sessions. As far as the mediation sessions, we've had several of them now, which is always an encouraging sign when parties opt to go to mediation for settlement purposes, that there's been enough to keep bringing people back to the table, and that certainly has been the case here. These mediation sessions are before a retired federal judge, and that the case was assigned to. So,
can you tell us who that is?
Judge Neiman. While we can't discuss this particular case, we certainly can discuss the nature of these types of cases, and whatever questions you might have about them.
I used to cover City Hall when you were back as an assistant city solicitor, and then when you became the solicitor. And it seems every 2 years that there's a lot of talk about folks who run for school committee and folks who run for city council, and there's never enough candidates. There's always been squawking, ways to get more candidates involved. And the city has made some effort to stimulate more interest by raising councilor and school committee stipends.
Yes.
From everything I've seen, that really hasn't had the effect the desired effect. Every 2 years we see about 18, 19 city councilors.
Right.
And then this lawsuit is filed.
Yeah.
And one of the tenets to that lawsuit is that it would presumably trigger more interest in running if people could run from a neighborhood as opposed to running citywide.
Right.
Right? Do I have that right?
You do.
Okay.
You do.
So what's your view on, do you think, you've been around City Hall now for a long time, you've worked for several city managers.
Yes.
Do you think that would actually achieve that goal?
It certainly could, and it certainly has in other communities and in other parts of the country. One thing to keep in mind is, so Lowell is one of the few communities that still has an at-large system. At-large systems per se are not a problem. They, in fact, many of the resolutions to these cases will involve various at-large remedies, and there's lots of different ones. By the same token,
meaning a few seats will be at-large seats, right? As opposed to district seats?
Meaning right now we have a system of government that is at large. All councilors, all 9 councilors run at large. You can still have a system like that, and in fact, many of these voting rights cases have, when they have resolved, have used an at-large resolution. But there's different types. So one of the most well-known is Cambridge, which voters will go in and they rank. It's called ranked choice voting, and they rank their voters, their candidates rather, and then the election office will utilize a formula through a computer, and it will come out with the end results. And in fact, in Maine, that was an issue in I believe it was maybe the governor's race, or so.
Actually, I think it was race for Congress.
Race for Congress, you're right. And other types of at-large systems are cumulative voting. So, say you had 9 candidates, you would go in and you could, and you were running for the council. I could go in and I could cast all of my 9 ballots for Chris Scott. Or it could be some combination. Maybe you have, you're allotted, say, 4 votes, and you can cast them all for a particular person. And the other system that's common is referred to as limited voting. And limited voting simply means that if you had 9 councilors running, voters could go in and vote for up to, say, 4 or up to 5. And so those are different types of at-large options. There has been a lot of talk about hybrid systems, and I don't know that actually cases have been ordered by the court that way, but they certainly have been resolved that way in the past.
What do you think would work best in Lowell?
Well, I can't speak to
But as a
the
Lowell
case.
resident, you're a Lowell resident, you vote.
Yes, I'm a Lowell resident, but by the same token, I'm also involved in this suit. So I really wouldn't, if I had an opinion, which I don't really at this point, I don't think it would be fair to
Do you think the
be
system
sharing
should
it.
be tweaked? Do you think the system should be changed?
Well, that's really the heart of the case. And again, I will say this, that certainly those that are bringing the suit are doing so in what they think is the best interest of the city. And certainly these are important issues. And so as we go through mediation and all the time that we spend on this, with both our expert as well as the expert on the other side, I think it's all time well spent. And if we can end this by having a system that's better, that is even more inclusive than what we have now, then the city is better off, obviously.
Do you think that there'll be a resolution reached through mediation, or will it go to trial?
Well, it's in mediation, and so there's not a lot more I can say.
Okay.
I wouldn't be speculating. But also, we're under a strict confidentiality, so we wouldn't want to do anything to
you said earlier that
disrupt that.
You said earlier that because it's in mediation, you've had, what, 5 or 6 sessions?
Yes.
That's an encouraging sign that both parties want to be at that table. Did I understand that correctly?
That's right. So I think it's always encouraging if parties are engaged in good faith mediation sessions that there's enough to keep bringing people back to the table. And so we have had several sessions.
There's some speculation out there that you're a proponent and feel that the city could win at trial. I know. Can you? You're not going to touch that one, right? That question.
What exactly is the question?
That you're a proponent of.
Yeah.
If we need to go to trial, let's go to trial, and the city has a strong case, and the city could prevail.
Well. Right. So we're in mediation, and I wouldn't speculate about whether we have a strong case or a weak case publicly. A lot of these cases really turn on the experts' findings. So it's very difficult for anybody, a layperson, to look at a community and even look at the results, and even look at good results. Say in this last election. Vesna Noon was the #1 vote getter. So from a perspective,
And he's not from Belvedere.
And he's not from Belvedere. So from the perspective of issues of diversity and representation throughout the city, those are always good things. But the point is that a community's actual voting numbers, drilling down into those numbers by experts who run formulas. There's really only 2 formulas. That's really the only way that a community would be able to have a sense as to whether they are totally compliant, or whether perhaps it's more in the mid-range, but perhaps they could do better, or that there's a real problem. And so, one aspect of your question that anybody could be a proponent of really moving forward on the strength of a case. None of that is really known until you sit down with an expert and you have your numbers looked at, and those aspects of the case were addressed in this past year and ongoing.
Can you give the viewers and the city residents any sense of when this could be wrapped up?
Not yet. But I think what I could say is that all parties that are involved are certainly working hard to come to whatever that resolution is going to be, whatever that final result is going to be, to reach it sooner rather than later, to have a timely result.
This week, a city councilor was on the morning radio station WCAP with Teddy Panos, and he expressed some confidence that this still could be wrapped up in time for the 2009. We're in an election year.
Yeah.
There'll be possibly a city preliminary election this year if there are enough there are enough candidates.
Right.
Certainly a general in November. Do you share that optimism? Or do you think when voters go to the polls this fall, it will just be under the normal procedures?
Yeah. I think everything right now is still on the table, and so I would just leave it at that. again, other than that the parties are working hard in their mediation sessions, and we'll see what comes of those.
Do you feel that if there is a resolution, either for this election or for the following one, that it will trigger more interest in getting people to vote?
Well, let me say this, that if the city were to change how it conducts its elections, it would be very disappointing for both sides to not get the desired results.
But do you think that it would, based on everything that you've seen and all the previous attempts to stimulate more interest?
Well, it's just too speculative at this point.
Okay.
You'd have to, even if there was going to be a change and you knew exactly what type of system was going to be adopted, I think that it's always hard to say. In fact, some communities that have instituted changes have also they've resolved cases, but they have held back and reserved the opportunity to. And I think plaintiffs have also been encouraged by this, where they reserve the opportunity after a couple of election cycles to take a look at it and see whether it's working or whether further changes need to take place. It's not unusual that when cases like this are filed, that courts will typically retain jurisdiction over them for that purpose. And that was the same thing with the case that the city brought involving the vocational school.
The weighted voting.
The weighted voting. And so, in that case, we knew what we were going to be doing, but it's just very difficult to speculate. Will it be successful? Will it accomplish? And that was frankly, a much easier set of issues to wrestle with than the complexities of the Voting Rights Act.
This one.
Yeah.
We only have about 30 seconds left.
Sure.
I hoped we could hit on a couple more topics, but that's all right.
Yeah.
This is a big one.
Yeah.
When is the next mediation session scheduled? Is there one scheduled?
We do have an upcoming date, but the judge is going to be away for I think the next 3 weeks, and so it'll probably be within the month. The parties will be getting together on their own anyway.
Yeah. When the city goes to a mediation session, who beside yourself represents the city?
In this case, the mediation sessions have been attended by myself, by Rachel Brown, Etta Matchek, the mayor.
Not the city manager?
No. However, she has played an active role. We certainly will meet with the manager before we go. There have been times where I've called her during the mediation session, and then as soon as we get back,
there's an update.
There's an update.
Sure. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's a fascinating case.
It is.
And
it is. Yeah.
Well, actually, we're out of time. We can.
Yeah.
Well, I'll bring it back the next
No
time.
problem.
We can talk about it more. Christine, thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku in the LTC News playlist, or on Facebook at LTC Lowell. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for joining us.